Tonight on KQED Newsroom, Donald Trump becomes the third U.S. president in history to be impeached by Congress. Will Democrats face a backlash next year at the polls? Also, a controversial navigation center for the homeless is set to open here soon in San Francisco. We'll talk with Mayor London Breed about the center and other efforts to combat homelessness in the city. And the holidays are right around the corner. We'll hear from food experts on fun and tasty ways to savor the magic of the season. Good evening and welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Lily Jamali. We begin tonight with impeachment and the latest presidential debate. On Wednesday night, after hours of impassioned appeals, the House of Representatives passed 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump, charging him with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. 2 Democrats joined Republicans in rejecting both articles, while a 3rd Democrat cast his vote against the obstruction charge. Also this week, 7 Democratic presidential hopefuls headed to California for a debate at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. This time, it was Mayor Pete Buttigieg who was on the defensive, clashing with Senator Warren over a recent fundraiser held in Napa Valley. With me now is senior political writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, Joe Garofoli, and LA Times political reporter Melanie Mason. Melanie joins us by Skype from Los Angeles, and welcome to you both.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you both here. Joe, I want to start with you, and I'm going to do a little bit of a mea culpa here. Am I crazy? Because it almost feels like there wasn't an impeachment of a president this week.
Right. No, I felt the same way. We saw the headlines, president impeached. But I think part of that is, that's the historical import, of course, one of 3 presidents to ever be impeached. And but at the same time, we knew this was coming for weeks. Mm-hmm. And we know where it's going. There's no suspense.
There's a little bit of an anticlimactic thing happening.
We know how the story ends. And so it's hard to get too worked up about it, except for maybe a couple plot twists in between. But we know where this is going.
Well, speaking of where the story is going, Melanie, to you in Los Angeles, Speaker Pelosi has made it clear that she may well wait before handing over these articles of impeachment to the Senate. What is the strategy there in your view? I mean, what is she thinking?
I think that there are a couple of things at play. I mean, of course, Nancy Pelosi is a master technician of the legislature. She, much like Mitch McConnell, her counterpart in the Senate, the Republican leader, are both masters of sort of the arcane processes and the ways to sort of dominate legislating. And so it's kind of fascinating to watch the 2 of them sort of square off. So I think by holding these articles of impeachment, perhaps she's trying to get a little bit of leverage when it comes to the rules of the Senate impeachment trial, for example. Or perhaps she's waiting for some of these court cases to decide if some key Trump administration officials will, in fact, have to testify, as the House tried to get them to do. But I think a lot of it is also just getting under the president's skin, which the speaker really does have quite an ability to do. So the fact that we know that the president wants to move quickly to this Senate trial, he thinks that he will be cleared and, in his words, exonerated in that Senate trial. The fact that she's denying him that quick resolution probably is just a way to irk him a little bit.
And Joe, what do you think Democrats gain by holding off on sending these articles over, if they end up doing that?
I'm baffled what either side gains in going. I would think that both sides would want this to be over quickly. The Republicans want it to be over quickly because they want the tied in a bow. The president's exonerated. Let's move on to the election. But the Democrats, they've won. They've won their round. The president has been impeached. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more they can gain. It only goes downhill for them. I get what Pelosi's doing to try and stretch out the trial a little bit longer, but to what end?
Yeah. To
what end? And then plus you got the campaign starting. And you're going to have several senators who were off the campaign trail to act as jurors in this campaign. I don't see where the Democrats win by dragging it out.
Melanie, I want to ask you about public opinion. Fascinating to see this poll out from ABC News and the Washington Post on the eve of impeachment, showing that Americans are split on whether President Trump should be removed. And I want to ask you, why do you think Democrats are having such a hard time making their case?
Well, I think there's a couple things at play. The first is that this is a fairly complicated circumstance that we're talking about, right? And you're asking the American public to keep track of a lot of details about who in Ukraine talked to whom in the administration at what point and what was demanded and what wasn't. And even though I think that the House Democrats did a fairly good job in presenting a linear sort of narrative, it's still fairly complicated. But I think more than that, it really reflects kind of the knee-jerk partisanship that we're seeing across the country right now. There's just these divisions have hardened so much that I think that it would take really overwhelming, stunning evidence to sway people from either side. I think people are really committed to their red team or their blue team, and I'm not sure that these facts would sway them one way or the other.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that, Melanie. We're going to switch gears now and talk about last night's debate, the first one held here in California at Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles. And Joe, I want to read something that you had basically in the form of advice for the moderators of this debate in an article that you wrote on the eve of the debate. You said, start with what Californians feel is their top challenge, housing and homelessness. Questions on those topics have been rarer than a sub $2,000 rental in Napa Valley. No questions on those topics. Were you surprised?
Zero. I was surprised. I was very surprised, and it's too bad for the moderators that they did that, and also too bad for the candidates. California starts to vote the same day as the Iowa caucuses. They want to show what they know about California, how they understand their problems. They didn't get a chance to do that. They didn't talk about homelessness. They didn't talk about housing. There was a quick mention of wildfires by Klobuchar in the context of climate change, but other than that, there was bupkis about California.
Melanie, where do you think California was in this debate? What happened?
It was pretty absent. And I think the thing that's surprising, particularly when it comes to housing and homelessness, is that the candidates actually have housing and homelessness plans, which is kind of a rarity for a national campaign. So it's not like these candidates wouldn't have been prepared to talk about the issue if it was brought up. And perhaps they deserve a little bit of blame for not wedging the issue in, because Lord knows a politician can always find a way to get to their talking point if they want to. But I was surprised that it wasn't something that came up from the moderators, because it really does seem like a gimme being out here in California.
Melanie, was there a clear winner in your view?
You know, I think that there are several people who walked away with a good night. I think the thing that jumped out to me was former Vice President Joe Biden. I think this is one of his crispest, clearest debates, and he's had some issues in the past debates of maybe garbling what he was trying to say. But I found his answers to be concise. I found them to be pretty strong. And I think that also it was interesting to watch Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota, who we've been hearing on the ground in Iowa for weeks now. You know, don't count Klobuchar out. She's got these strong connections with rural voters. She's really been putting the time in there. And I think she showed this real feisty sensibility, particularly in going after South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg, that could really sway some people as they're moving into this final month of decision.
How do you view the winners and losers?
I agree on the Klobuchar point. I think that 20% of voters have no opinion of Amy Klobuchar, just like 20% of voters have no opinion of Mayor Pete, surprisingly enough. So Klobuchar definitely helped herself and she had the most speaking time last night as well. Mayor Pete did not have a good night. He was attacked for his lack of experience. He is mayor of a city that's smaller than Antioch, which is a suburb here in the Bay Area. And they went after him about that.
Well, how do you think he fared in response to the attack on the wine cave in Napa Valley fundraiser?
Yes.
That was not on my bingo card. Neither was purity tests.
No, wine cave was not on my wine. And of course, some people in Northern California are saying, well, hey, that's the proper way to store wine. But that's the snooty Northern California response. Only here is that the response. But no, that may hurt him with the progressive base, because billionaires and millionaires are demonized in the Democratic electorate. And so to see, this is something that's been brewing for weeks on the campaign trail. Warren has been sniping at him about it, and it was called out in the open. And he had to explain himself. His explanation was, "Hey, that's the system we have. I'm gonna raise money. I'm not gonna go with one time behind my back." But it was not a good look for him.
All right. Well, before we let you go, Joe, I want to ask you what you think the hokiest question of the evening was. The
hokiest question, no doubt, was the question about what would you like to apologize for, or what gift you would like to give. And Mel, I can't wait to hear your response to this, because I know you're gonna love this. the gendered response we got. The female candidates, apologized, and Warren said sometimes I come on too strong. The male candidates really didn't apologize for anything. Andrew Yang said, "Buy my book."
Buy my book.
Yeah.
That's
Mel,
right.
come on.
What do you think, Melanie?
Oh, I think that the breakdown of the gender responses was stunning. And I think in the moment I was so crazy on deadline that it didn't really land with me. And then there were some very smart analysis pieces the day after that pointed it out. And man, I mean, the idea that you had these two accomplished women senators and their first instinct is to apologize for getting worked up because they fight too hard or whatever. I mean, It sounds a little bit like when Hillary Clinton, when she was asked what her biggest negative is, was that she cares too much. But still, the fact that women's instinct was to apologize and the men's was to self-promote, I mean, man, you could write a whole grad school thesis just on that alone.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we are going to leave things there. Thanks to both of you for joining me. Joe Garofoli, writer at the San Francisco Chronicle, and from Los Angeles via Skype, Melanie Mason of the LA Times. Great to have you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
By the end of this month, a 200-bed homeless navigation center on San Francisco's Embarcadero will open its doors. Mayor London Breed has championed the shelter despite efforts to block its construction by neighbors who fear it'll increase crime and drug use in the area. Supervisor Matt Haney reintroduced legislation that would direct every city supervisor to secure sites in their districts for similar shelters. More than 8,000 people in San Francisco are homeless, a nearly 20% increase from 2017. Joining me now is San Francisco Mayor London Breed. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
We have to start with this sort of lightning rod debate around this navigation center, and I wanted to begin by asking you if you've been surprised by the tenor of the opposition.
Well, probably just a little bit disappointed, but I understand that people who may not be familiar or comfortable with what they believe a traditional homeless shelter is near their home, I mean, it could be of concern. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why we had so many community meetings. That's why we tried to explain to people that this is different than what we've ever done before. And I've not deviated from my commitment that I made from day one to change how we provide shelter to homeless people. It can't just be in the evening. It has to be 24 hours. It has to lead to something more permanent. And so we need to adopt this new model and move it forward and provide opportunities, all over San Francisco.
So it opens at the end of this year, so just a couple of days from now, and it's designed to house 200 people, but initially is only going to house about 130 people, to my understanding. Yes. Why is that?
Part of it is, people think we can just open these places and all of a sudden, like magic, they have staff, they have the resources that they need. People need to be hired, and we need to make sure that there is staff 24-hour. We want to make sure that the number of people who are working in this facility meets the need of the 100 or to 200 people that are going to be housed there. And so that just takes time. It's a very challenging process. It's a very costly one. And it's just not as easy as just opening the beds and filling them and thinking that we have sufficient staffing to accommodate them.
So the criticism has been that while you're sort of doing this run-up, as many as 70 people who could be sheltered won't be sheltered. And what people are saying is that might have to do with this opposition that has been so powerful and so vocal from the neighborhood.
Well, actually, it doesn't. Again, we have an affordability crisis because we don't have enough housing, period. So where do you think we get people to hire for this particular purpose? They don't just magically fall out the sky. We have to interview people. We have to make sure they're qualified. We have to make sure that they can work with the population, which can sometimes be quite challenging. People who suffer from mental illness and substance use disorder, people who have real challenges. We have to make sure, and we have been working on ensuring that there are staff available for this particular navigation center. So it's not about trying to, appeal to anyone. It's about being responsible and making sure that we have what we need to make sure that it's a safe place for people to be. The commitments that the city have made are fulfilled.
So what has this experience taught you? You were booed at meetings over this navigation center.
It wasn't the first time and it won't be the last. And the fact is, you know, we have to do this. And I'm not afraid to take a chance. I'm not afraid to do what's necessary. I understand, look, you know, this is not always a popularity contest. I am not here to be a political mayor. I'm here to be a mayor that delivers on making San Francisco better. And what that means is in the process, I'm going to piss off some people. I'm going to make some people happy. But I can't do my job based on popularity. The focus has to be change and moving San Francisco forward and taking the risk and not being afraid to be booed or to be criticized or to be put down. Because at the end of the day, we're going to be able to provide 200 new shelter beds, and that is really what my goal is to provide opportunities to deal with the #1 issue that we face as a city that everyone talks about every single day, and that is homelessness.
Well, speaking of goals, you have set a very ambitious one of creating 1,000 beds for the homeless. Yes. How feasible do you think that goal really is in practice?
This year, with this new navigation center, we have 566 towards that goal. We just announced another 75-bed transitional aid youth shelter. That's 75 beds. We have a couple of others in the pipeline. So we are well on our way to meeting that goal. So I'm really excited and grateful to so many people who've been involved in this process and helping to identify locations, work with nonprofit service providers, the process, the funding, all the different layers that go into moving this forward. But I want to be clear, you know, having shelter beds is important, but having housing, safe, affordable places for not only homeless people to call home, but average, everyday San Franciscans who are working in our restaurants, who are driving our buses, who are taking care of the city, people who are working in shelters. We have to make sure that they have places to live too. So building housing faster has to be a top priority for us as well.
And you're looking to make a really big hire in this area with a director of your Housing and Community Development Office. How is that search going so far?
We hopefully will be able to make a decision on that sometime early next year.
Can you give us a sense of what qualities you're looking for in a candidate?
Well, I want someone who is creative, who's innovative, who understands the need to not only build affordable housing faster, but someone who understands the importance of preservation of existing affordable housing. So many opportunities that we miss are when we are looking us right in the eye where people are currently living. Affordable housing all over San Francisco. In the Western Addition where I grew up, properties that are extended past their lifetime that need to be repaired, we want to make sure that we protect existing people in their current homes as well as building more housing faster.
And I just have a few seconds left with you, but very quickly, because President Trump has made such a big issue out of homelessness in the state and in your city, in our city, I wonder if you'd ever work with the president on this issue. Would you ever accept help from him?
Well, let me be clear. First of all, when hopefully he finally realizes he's the president of all the United States, not just who he talks to on a regular basis or tweets at or what have you. I mean, anyone who's willing to help us with this issue, providing resources, changes to policies that work for San Francisco, that's who I'm willing to work with, someone who genuinely cares about addressing the issue. And sadly, time and time again, he has not proven that he is someone who believes that. He's only attacking San Francisco because he's attacking the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. It's all political. It's all unfortunate. And we've yet to see anything that has given us any indication that he's going to do anything better.
All right. Mayor London Breed of San Francisco, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look around and the sights and sounds of the season abound, from Christmas trees twinkling with lights to skates carving figure eights on ice as stores beckon shoppers with gift ideas day and night. It's also time to savor the festive flavors of the holidays, best served warm in the company of friends and family. With me to talk about food and cooking this holiday season are Sunset Magazine food editor Ellen Fort and the chef and owner of Prairie Restaurant, Anthony Strong. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
And we're going to start with just very simple top holiday tips for the season. And let's go to you first with that, Ellen.
I can give a lot of cooking tips, but I think one thing that people often forget about and can really affect the rest of your day is to not get hangry. That's hungry and therefore angry.
Oh, I'm familiar with hangry.
I know those customers.
I think one of the best things you can do is really plan ahead while you're cooking and have a big cheese board, plenty of snacks. It's really fun to put together a cheese board with all the different fruits and cut sliced meats and different stuff, and it can really kind of save the day when everybody's circling around.
Definitely. A lot of protein on that board from what you're describing. How about you, Anthony?
I think along those same lines, make it easy on yourself and interactive with all your friends. Instead of trying to land a 8-course menu on the table, boil some crab and crack it together, or have a gingerbread house decorating party, or make dumplings or latkes, or something that gets everybody involved so it doesn't all fall on one person making dinner.
Right. So thinking to the actual meal that you're preparing, I happen to get very stressed out when I'm cooking for a lot of people. So for stress baskets like me, what do you recommend, Ellen, to actually do some of the cooking for the, whether it's a bird or whether it's some side dishes, to get some of that going even a couple of days ahead of time?
I recommend, having plenty of things that you can really set aside the night before. On Christmas morning, I'll have done a sausage casserole and put it in the fridge the night before. So I can just get up, put it right in there, and we can do the whole morning section of things and have it done ahead. Anything like that you can really prepare and assemble, I think is the jam.
Mm-hmm. How about you?
I completely agree. And I always recommend to anybody hosting a party to order some takeout ahead of time so you're fed and ready to go and you're not worried about feeding you, because you're going to be so busy doing all these other things. Sometimes you forget to eat.
So if I'm not mistaken, you have young kids, right?
I do.
Okay,
yes.
and so this is interesting. I also have young kids, and I want to include them. Don't get me wrong, but they can also provide some distraction when you're trying to cook.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend for getting them involved, but not too involved?
Nothing sharp or hot, of course. Everyone knows that. And I also, in my personal life, I just can't give them anything to measure. They just can't measure anything. And they, so anyway, I always recommend giving them things like herbs. Pick the leaves off the parsley, pick the leaves off the thyme, help me peel the oranges. Do just anything that they can kind of do that is not involving the integrity of the recipe.
Or will not create a giant mess.
Cooking with children is great, but it's also kind of hard.
Yeah. All right.
Honesty.
Well, one of the things that I think kids love to do, and you see these kits everywhere you go during the holiday season, is these gingerbread kits. And Anthony, you're sort of a connoisseur, if not a full-on, expert at making gingerbread houses. And I want to ask you about if you could just actually begin by describing the gingerbread houses that you've learned to make over the last few years.
Yeah, I don't know about connoisseur, but I'm definitely a nerd. And it's something, I just kind of went down the rabbit hole a few years ago and started nerding out on gingerbread houses, and did one that was 4 stories tall and very Seuss-like, defying gravity.
It had piping, if I'm not mistaken.
Tons of piping, and yeah. This year's house, we actually we're teaching classes every Saturday in December.
At the restaurant.
At the restaurant, and people can come in and decorate it.
So one of the things that's so interesting to me about this is you've described this process as very similar to construction as opposed to cooking. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. For me, it's straight up construction. You even make the gingerbread so durable that you can not crack it with a hammer.
So the intent is not to eat it one day.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just for the look.
I have to slap the children's hands away from it all the time. They're like, when are we going to eat it? It's never. It's so hard.
Okay, so let's get real for just a moment. I want you to be honest and tell me your top holiday cooking debacle. You want to go to you first, Ellen?
Sure. A couple of Thanksgivings ago, I had an ambitious project. I didn't want to do a regular turkey, so I decided to do a turketta, which is basically in the style of a porchetta, which is you get the turkey breasts, butterfly it, you put all the herbs, you roll it up and tie it. I sous vide it overnight, and then the next day, everyone was in the house, all our guests were there, it was super busy around me, and I kind of was just in full, going forward mode, and I had this big boiling pot of oil. So I just dunked that porchetta right in it to fry it, and it just displaced half the oil all over the stovetop, all over everything, and it really really was a nightmare. Not only because it was dangerous, but because then I had to clean oil out of like every crevice of the stove for a long time after. So don't do that.
That is painful to hear. Anthony, can you top that?
Brutal. I can barely. No, I can't top that. I don't think I
It turned
can
out
at
okay
all.
though. We ate it. It was good.
I landed it on the table.
Okay, all right. So there's a redeemable end to that story.
It was good.
What's yours?
Well, the holidays are a pretty big deal for restaurants, and we tend to get in lots of luxury ingredients. And one year for New Year's, we'd gotten a bunch of white and black truffles, and to keep them safe, I put them in a container, stashed them in a corner at the very top of the refrigerator where nobody would find them. And lo and behold, on New Year's Eve, as we're setting up for New Year's Eve night, I found out that one of the prep cooks in the morning opened up the container and was like, "What are these ugly, weird-smelling things?" and threw them in the trash. And it had gotten picked up, so they were long gone. And I ended up having to hustle around the city buying truffles from a couple of other restaurants.
Oh my gosh.
who were
Good thing
gracious
they're
enough to
very-
sell them to us.
I think they're very cheap and affordable,
I
right?
think they're super cheap. It's that.
Before we go, I want to talk about gifts for the holidays that might help the cooking process along this season. Ellen, you put together a gift guide for people like me who are way behind on our holiday shopping, for things that people can use as they're doing their holiday prep. What are some of the items on that list?
Well, one thing that if someone doesn't have one, you have to buy it for your friend to be a good friend, is a cast iron pan. I mean, those things last forever. They become an heirloom. Once they're good and seasoned, you can cook anything in it. Truly like a staple. And the other thing that's on our guide that's really fun is a little Japanese butter knife. So when you have a hard butter right out of the fridge, you can't spread it. It has little holes in it, so it kind of curls the butter, which makes it easy to spread. And it's just one of those things you wouldn't buy for yourself, but it's really fun and useful.
Yeah, and you can never have too much butter. Anthony, how about you?
I go for microplanes. Everybody gets a microplane
All
for
right.
Christmas, for the holidays.
Describe what that is for people who are
Oh, a
unfamiliar.
microplane, they have many different varieties. They're super sharp graters and zesters for citrus, cheeses, all sorts of things.
And you get it really finely shredded, which is amazing. It is so great to have both of you here. Ellen Ford is the food editor at Sunset Magazine, and Anthony Strong is the chef and owner at Prairie Restaurant. Thanks to both of you for coming in.
Thanks for having us. Happy holidays.
And that will do it for us. You can see more of Ellen's holiday gift ideas at sunset.com. As always, you can find more of our coverage at kqed.org/newsroom. I'm Lily Jamali. Happy holidays, and we will see you in the new year.